Hi, my name's Phil. I like to talk about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the huge bonfire of critical Brexit shortages that are hitting us, which also includes actually knackering our bonfires this year. Well, not the bonfires, but Bonfire Night, as well as some closures of petrol stations now, and wonder why the public are not demanding urgent government action at this point. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So the latest consequences of Brexit shortages are that we're going to struggle to get fireworks to Bonfire Night, and petrol stations are closing in some areas, small number of areas. And the list is just getting longer and longer. And yet the government seem to keep getting away with it. Sure, people are upset, yeah. But as someone pointed out recently, I saw, when there was a shortage of petrol during Labour's last period in power, nearly 20 years ago, or was it about 20 years ago? The polls took a devastating nosedive. It was an absolute disaster. And the list of shortages affecting ordinary people right now is incredibly long. And yet there's no great public outrage. Now, the cause of the petrol shortage is slightly different. I mean, during the Labour government, it was entirely political. It was a result of lorry drivers protesting and blocking refineries, which was sparked by an increase on fuel duty by the government, and the fact that we are utterly reliant on this couple of refineries that are easily blocked by large vehicles. And it's why I've sort of said recently, if farmers really wanted to protest against the government's treatment of their industry, instead of driving their tractors down a road in London, which does nothing because, well, let's face it, roads are designed for that sort of activity, they should have parked them outside some refineries or other critical areas of our infrastructure. But anyway, now we've got reports that a small number, and I'll keep emphasising, small number of petrol stations have been closed by BP and Esso, some Tesco stations. And nationally, of course, it's not going to be that noticeable unless it spreads. But it's surely pretty devastating for the affected areas. And it's certainly considered worth sticking on the front pages of today's newspapers. In fact, I'll tell you what I found amazing. Now, obviously, you'd expect a slightly different spin on the issue from different papers. For example, papers that support the government tend to do them a solid and downplay the issues, and they most certainly throw the blame someone else's way. Because that's the difference, isn't it? That's why Labour were clobbered 20 years ago, and the Conservatives, although they're not getting off scot-free, are still not being punished in the polls as severely. And it's really just because, the media will highlight every failing in a Labour government and exaggerate the hell out of it. Whereas when it's a Conservative one, it says, oh, yeah, that's actually someone else's fault. It's actually France's fault, really. It's actually Labour's fault, even though they've not been in power for over 10 years. And because they're not just inflicting shortages of petrol, but we've got massively increased energy bills, shortages of food, shortage of medicines, cuts to the incomes of the lowest paid workers, increases on the tax burden of ordinary workers. How are they getting away with it? Because the media let them think that it's all down to global issues outside the government's control. So how come nobody else around here is having these shortages and price increases then? How come we don't see these problems in the Netherlands, in Ireland, France, Belgium, and so on? Why do all these things only happen to us? And how come they've only been happening to us since Brexit? It's one hell of a coincidence, if you ask me. So yeah, complicit media and those closest to the Tories working hardest to con the public. Those opposed to the government, not that there are many of those, will lay the issues bare for their readers. So then I got to one paper, and it caught me a little by surprise. I suppose it shouldn't in some ways. It said, we're running on empty. That's the headline. That's the front page. We're running on empty. Now, I would actually say this is quite an alarmist headline. Yes, this is serious, and I expect the media to explain that and that it is serious and what's causing it, because that often goes astray. But I don't need them to exaggerate. It talks about fears of rationing as well as a threat to food on the shelves, presumably means a further threat to food on the shelves. Then it talks about calls to rip up immigration laws to let foreign drivers return. Again, I exaggerate. Not that the laws don't need ripping up. I mean, I wish they would be, but they don't. You just need to add lorry drivers onto the shortage list. Also, all very alarmist is what I'm saying, all very over the top, but in a way that is effectively not helping the government. And then you think to yourself, so this is obviously an anti-Tory newspaper. Now, this is the Sun. This is Murdoch's loss-making pet arguing for a relaxation of immigration rules, and rather than downplaying the crisis, as often is the case, they're actually inflating it, if anything. The British media is a funny bunny. But then I suppose that's part of the problem. It's not really the British media, is it? It's controlled by people who don't live here, have no great regard for the people of the country. But it's not just petrol that's the latest casualty of our Brexit shortages. Lorry drivers, again, in this case, I mean, that's the issue, and this is why, it could spread. It's caused by a lack of lorry drivers, and this is the point we need to keep trying to emphasise. As all we're doing at the moment, we're not increasing the number of lorry drivers, we're just moving the existing lorry drivers around. Some companies need lorry drivers, they're forced to pay more. It's great for the lorry drivers. They're forced to pay more, they go there. But then those lorry drivers have left somewhere else. So now what's happening is part of the fuel industry has lost their lorry drivers, hence the closure of some of these petrol stations. So then one of two things will happen. Either this will just carry on getting worse and it might spread, or they will be forced to up the ante and pay the lorry drivers even more. And then what does that do? It just moves the lorry drivers from someone else, and then we get another shortage somewhere else, or a worse shortage somewhere else. But it's not just petrol now. Fireworks. They've also gone for a burden. Now, a report is suggesting that the UK, according to a supplier near me, actually, in Doncaster, is only going to be getting 30% of the fireworks stock that it would usually have this year for Bonfire Night. And this was put down to three things. This was quite illuminating. First of all, the fireworks from China have to pass through EU countries before they can get to the UK. Well, given that what we're talking about here are explosives, there are a lot of concerns. You can't, they have to be carefully tracked. And it was fine before Brexit, but now some countries consider it quite a lot of hassle. It was said that Belgium, for example, charge extra due to the administrative burden, the extra, basically owing to the dangerous nature of fireworks, there's a right paper trail that just didn't exist on this scale before Brexit. And other EU countries don't really want to put themselves out just so that we can get some fireworks. So it's very costly, a lot of delays, and we are now only going to have 30% of the expected amount of stocks of fireworks. And obviously this is not a factor that will go away in the foreseeable future either. So it will hit next year and the year after, and every year after that until we realign with the EU. The second issue is the same issue that's knackering everything right now. We have a shortage of workers. Really as simple as that. But then the third issue, not considered this, but this has knock-on effects for other things as well. The third reason is the most ridiculous of all. They weren't able to stockpile. The point was made that fireworks have a long shelf life. So you think to yourself, so if you've got delays on something, the ideal way to mitigate against not having reliable supplies of something is you just stockpile, and you keep your stockpile topped up. And if you've got a long shelf life, that's an ideal product to stockpile. But the problem here is, the prices will still go up due to the first two factors, but we should still be able to have enough for anyone willing to pay the extra. But here's where another aspect of Brexit caused an issue, and it's a really stupid one. The government keeps saying that they are going to move on from the internationally regarded CE mark to our own UKCA mark. And this was supposed to happen this coming January. I talked recently about the fact it hasn't because they've delayed it. So what happened was businesses, until the government announced a delay on that, they had no way of knowing that. As far as they were concerned, anything with a CE mark could not be sold from this coming January. So there's no point in stocking up on CE marked goods if you can't sell them in Britain the next year. So you only stock up with what you know you can sell, otherwise you make a huge loss. In fact, I suspect it's the delay for the next year that because they were saying we'll probably have enough for New Year. That's probably because of this they now can get more in. But not Bonfire Night, it's too late for that. But the delay is only supposed to be until 2023, so we'll still have the same issue next year. We'll get towards next year, the government saying, yeah, we're going to the UKCA mark in 2023. So they'll say, well, we're not going to stockpile all this CE marked stuff then. So the same thing applies. People don't want to overstock on items that cannot be legally sold after a certain date. And none of these factors are global issues, you'll notice as well. None of those three issues are global issues, not one of them. And yes, I'm personally not bothered about a shortage of fireworks. I'm not entirely sure why we like to shoot the sky scaring the crap out of pets and wildlife. But the point is, it is a part of our way of life that is being curtailed and if not stopped altogether for some people because of the extra costs and lack of availability. And it's because of the political decisions made by our government. If Brexit had never been a thing, we wouldn't be talking about this now. In addition, these three factors also impact other goods. So even if you, like me, don't really care about fireworks, it impacts other things as well. The idea of not stocking up on CE marked goods beyond the date when we can be sure that they can be legally sold affects other things as well. And if those other things we have unreliable supplies of, but we daren't stockpile too much because we might be left with a load of stuff we can't sell, then we are going to run short. And when we have longer delays in getting imports because of Brexit, and a reluctance to stockpile again because of Brexit, then we have a situation where Brexit is causing a problem and we can't apply the obvious solution to mitigate that problem because Brexit also prevents that. We have Brexit on top of Brexit on top of Brexit. And the problem is that even, there's some parts of the media will report on the various crises. Too few of them explain how it's Brexit. Even when it's implied, the term is not used. Some may go as far as to say, because of the EU lorry drivers who went home and didn't come back, hoping you'll see the penny fall. But what they should be saying is, because of the EU lorry drivers who went home and couldn't come back because of Brexit. And not just any Brexit. It wasn't the Brexit you voted for that did this, but the extreme Tory Brexit that Johnson pushed on us without any confirmatory vote. But there we are. When people said things were going to get worse, they weren't kidding. And guess what? They haven't stopped saying things are going to get worse yet. Fun times. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.